I'm Alan.
And I'm Jake.
Welcome to Crimicide True Stories, the show where we find 4 allegedly true scary stories from Reddit and share them with you guys. Without further ado, let's just get into the stories.
This story was submitted to our True Scary Stories by Reddit user Snoo Cauliflowers 3995. Hey everyone, first ever Reddit post, but felt I had to get some input. It all started when I was a child in my childhood home. Late at night, generally between 9 to 11 p.m., odd things would start to happen in my home. Vacuums randomly turning on, mouse on the computer starting to move around on the screen by itself, things not being where they were left. Most things I would try to rationalize in my young mind. Maybe I forgot I moved what was missing. The mouse was the old style mouses with the rubber balls and wheels. Maybe some dust was lodged in it and caused it to slide. The vacuum was the only thing I could never rationalize. It was an old-fashioned push-button vacuum. I would always try to tell myself maybe there was a power surge, but I knew it wasn't. Every time it happened, the button would be fully depressed on the vacuum. No surge is pushing buttons. Before people say maybe a pet stepped on it, we had only a dog, one dog, and that dog was always by my side on the couch and was next to me multiple times while it happened. The oddest part, however, happened even later. For years, every night at around 3 a.m., the smell of burnt toast would fill the house. The smell would be so strong, my parents would wake and search the house, always coming to the same conclusion. The house is empty, the toaster is cold, nothing was in it. This wasn't isolated to my family witnessing it either. Friends that slept over would often ask, "Did you wake up and make toast in the middle of the night?" As they would be awoken by the smell too. We lived in a 2-story home. The smell just as strong upstairs in the bedroom as downstairs in the kitchen. I moved out of the home in my early 20s and purchased my own home. Everything was normal at first, no sounds, no toast smells, nothing. However, as I and my girlfriend settled in, things started happening. It first began with loud bangs coming from the attic. They sounded like a heavy footstep followed by a second foot dragging along the floor. Next, again, things started disappearing, phones not being where they were left. I began trying to rationalize again, writing off the bangs as nail pops as my home was built in the 40s. Again thinking maybe we moved our phones and other missing belongings without realizing it. That's when the shadows started. From my living room, you can see into the master bedroom, and even when the bedroom is pitch black, a dark silhouette can be seen from time to time, popping around the corner door frame. It almost looks like a head leaning out to look at what is going on in the living room. It's always caught out of the corner of your eye, and when you look over the shadow, it doesn't just vanish like your eyes are playing tricks on you, but seems to slowly sink back behind the wall, as if it was caught and leans back. Again, I tried to rationalize. It's my eyes playing with me. It was shortly after this I took a new job at a home security company. One of the perks was that I got nearly free home security. I had cameras, motion sensors, door and window sensors, the whole 9 yards. This is when things got into the point of no explanation. Every night, motion sensors would be set off. After a week of this, I replaced the motion sensor with a new unit, assuming it was defective. No luck, still motion every night. After a week or two, it progressed further, with the front door alarm going off. The difference is, unlike the motion sensor, the door sensor caused not only the home hub to alarm, but the speaker system to go off at a super loud volume. The first time it happened, I literally jumped out of bed, ran home, and searched the entire house before going to the hub to see what set it off. But the house was empty, and dog was in his crate. This happened for a few days, and I figured the battery in the door sensor must be dying. I checked the hub, which showed the battery level as 95%, but I changed it anyway. The next night, the same issue. By now, the motion sensor was no longer going off. I decided again that it must be a bad sensor and replaced it. The next night was quiet, no alarms, a full night of sleep, finally. I said that's it. The sensor was bad and now we're back to normal. That very night, however, I woke again to the loud blaring of the security system. This time I ran right to the hub. It only took a few seconds to get out, and if some kid or someone was hitting my door enough to set off the alarm, I could catch them on camera. That's when I saw the alert. My front door registered opening and closing 27 times in a 5-second span. I ended up getting rid of the sensors and only keeping the cameras. I've checked camera footage over and over, nothing was ever there. I had technicians come and check the system multiple times before I got rid of all the sensors. Nothing was ever found. No interference in the system, no faulty equipment, nothing. Things have certainly settled down in the last 2 years. I still see the shadows, and things do still occasionally go missing. We still hear bangs from the attic. I apologize for the long read, but wanted to get some input on other people's thoughts. Edit 1. Just wanted to add some back information that I didn't really think about when writing this post. First, this home was built in 1942 and was originally built as military housing for members of the U.S. Navy who were stationed at the Naval Yard 15 minutes away across the bridge. I'm not sure what kind of history this adds to the home, but thought maybe it could be connected. I also purchased this home from my great-aunt's estate, who always was very close to me. I am named after her father, and this always appeared to make her favor me over other nephews and nieces. Edit 2. I also forgot to mention about my son. My youngest son is 18 months old. I strongly believe that children are more susceptible to seeing the paranormal. I can't explain why, but I don't believe it to be wild imagination. My youngest son is a terrible sleeper, always needing someone next to him to stay asleep. With this, it's not uncommon to let him fall asleep on the couch next to me until it is time to move to the bedroom. With this being said, when my son does wake up, it's very slowly. He often lays with his eyes open for 10 to 20 minutes before getting up. On more than one occasion, my son has promptly and abruptly woken up and sat up in one swift motion. Every time he has done this, he smiles, waves at the front door, sometimes for minutes at a time. Every single time, he has just laid back down and immediately gone back to sleep. Certainly freaked me out the first few times it's occurred.
I will say that this story just really gives us vibes from the movie Paranormal Activity.
Because the home security stuff.
Specifically, the door that opened and shut 25 freaking times.
27 times.
27.
In 5 seconds.
In 5 seconds. That's a little terrifying.
That's hard to do.
Yeah, it is.
Actually, I'm sorry. It's impossible.
Do you pick ghost stories? I bet I could beat that. Do you pick ghost stories on purpose? Or is this just kind of...
It's just what I've picked the past few times. I'm not specifically looking out for ghost stories, but I'm just like seeing it and I'm just like, ooh, that's a cool story.
Well, you know what else is a cool story? The next story. Let's get into it.
This next story was posted to our True Scary Stories by Reddit user Laura Ingalls Wilding. So almost 30 years ago, I was a 4-year-old girl in Texas. Not the hilly, woodsy part, but the flat, desolate area in the Panhandle. Lubbock if you have to know specifics. My mom had work in the morning, so she had already gone to bed. It was a bit past 9:30. I was a little night owl, so I was still awake in my room, coloring in one of my coloring books while sitting on my bed. I was facing the wall with my coloring book propped up on my pillow. The page I was coloring was a princess in a castle tower. My lamp was on, I was coloring away, and I was absolutely fully awake. On the opposite side of my room was my bedroom window. It was partly open, and the screen had been loosened at the bottom by the cats coming in and out. The window had burglar bars because my mom had once been burgled years before I was born. The window was old and wouldn't stay all the way up, but 40 years of paint buildup allowed it to stay partly open on a hot night, so it just stayed a little broken. No big deal. Anyway, I can't remember if it was the movement or the sound of something scraping the screen, but somehow I looked over at the window. I noticed the big, hairy brown arm first, because it was, closest. The arm belonged to an equally big, hairy brown thing outside the window. It filled up the whole window. The top of its head was maybe an inch from the top of the window frame, making it at least 8 feet tall. It started trying to open the window further, but the crummy, ancient window kept sliding back down on the thing's arm, which made it angry. It bared its gorilla teeth and pressed its face against the burglar bars, pulling its arm out of the room. Then it started trying to rip the burglar bars off the house. The whole time, it was making this horrible rumbling, snuffling sound, almost like a gorilla, but just not a gorilla. When it started trying to break the burglar bars down, I unfroze. I had been struck with this complete disbelief. I was a pretty dry kid, didn't believe in monsters or Santa or anything much. So anyway, when it started trying to really get in my room, I finally ran to my mom's room, screaming my face off. Of course it had left by the time she woke up, and decided it was worth getting out of bed for. She didn't believe me, and no one else did either. I got in trouble at school a few years later because I wrote about it in my journal one day and wouldn't recant. Everyone around me thought I was bonkers, but I know what I saw. Additionally, the week or so before that happened, I had seen something in the big tree in my yard. It shook a huge section of branches where there was a good 5 to 6 feet vertical distance between the branches. It was my favorite tree to climb, so I knew where it was in the tree and that it would have to have been incredibly strong to move those branches like that. I had hoped it was just a random teen trespassing on my yard or some such, as it was hip to do in the early 90s, but after the monster incident, I had my doubts. As a kid, I just thought of it as my monster. I wasn't familiar with Sasquatch or anything. Bugs Bunny's abominable snowman was as good as it got for kid me's Bigfoot knowledge. I was in my teens when some internet rando finally believed me about it and told me it just had to be a Bigfoot. So yeah, I deadass saw Bigfoot in the flat part of Texas when I was little, and it was unsettling.
I'm not the biggest believer in Bigfoot,
I absolutely 100% believe in Bigfoot.
and this is where we will always differ.
I have a Bigfoot sticker on my computer.
But without too much stalling, let's get into the next story.
This story was submitted to our True Scary Stories by Reddit user SlimJim69. When I was a child, I had a friend whom we'll call Rosie. I was at Rosie's house and we decided to go to the park without an adult. It was snowy, so we had to wear our puffy winter jackets. On our way to the park, we spotted a strange man. Something about him just seemed off. He seemed weird. Rosie told me she felt creeped out by him and she wanted to just go home, but I told her it was fine. He was probably just some guy walking the same way as us. He wasn't bothering us. We kept walking when all of a sudden Rosie sped up. I thought she was just being dramatic until the man sped up. We sped up. He sped up. We sped up. He sped up. It went on like this for a while until we were all speed walking. It was super creepy, and Rosie and I were scared, but it went way too far. We were on the other side of the street, and then the man at the crosswalk, he sped up and began crossing to our side of the street. Rosie said one thing and one thing only. To this day, I still remember the fear in her eyes as she said it. Run. And that's just what she did. It was icy, but she just turned around and started running. I was startled and caught off guard for a moment, but I just started running as well. We were running as fast as we possibly could, and we could hear him behind us. It was icy, and I was afraid if I didn't slow down, I would fall. But I was more afraid of what would happen if I did slow down. We got to Rosie's house and slammed and locked the door. We looked out the window, and we could see him walking around outside.
There's really no resolution to this story. That's the end.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. That's all Slim Jim wrote.
What the fuck?
Can you give us a closer?
Slim Jim 69.
Reddit user Slim Jim 69. If you want to tell us how this situation was resolved, if it was, that'd be fantastic, my man.
Please, because I hate cliffhangers.
Yeah.
But hopefully this next story doesn't have a cliffhanger, so let's get into it.
This next story was posted to our True Scary Stories by Reddit user Flaming Timber. Me and some friends went to an abandoned mental asylum at night, not really expecting much. We busted in one of the boarded up windows, and when we were inside, we all heard talking. We figured other people were there, so we followed the sound. We were walking down the hall and heard what sounded like a woman whispering, "Why did you take my baby?" over and over again. At this point, I'm visibly shaking, and we all believed we found where the sound was coming from. We go in this room, and there was a huge cage. It looked like one of those pet carriers, but human-sized. I don't know what the fuck happened that night. I don't really believe dead people were talking in there, but the sheer creepiness of it all was too much.
I mean, I'd be spooked too.
I'd like to I feel like I need to apologize because I didn't realize how short this story was.
Well, a lot of these on YouTube, a lot of these guys who are reading Reddit stories always read long ones. It's nice to give the short stories some reading time on YouTube.
Like I said, all these stories are random. I just scroll through, click one, and save.
If you have a interesting title or just right off the bat, like a really cool heading for that story, I will click on it and I will I will read it without actually reading it first. I will read it.
I don't even read them. I just scroll, click.
When I'm reading them, speaking them out loud, that's the first time I'm reading them.
But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed these 4 allegedly true scary stories from Reddit.
Yeah, and last week this Reddit episode is
What?
our most viewed episode has been
I'm really proud of
the
it.
first
This
Reddit
show is my new baby.
stories episode.
But anyway, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. If you have a true scary story you'd want to submit to the channel, email it to crimicideyt@gmail.com and we'll put it in the show. We'd love to have it. I think it'd be really fun to have some fans. submitting stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be
totally. Get on it.
Yeah.
We
So
will read your story on the show.
Yeah,
Send it to
exactly. We
us.
will. And we'll see you in the next episode.